Question 1. Research into optimizing cloud resource utilization for a mid-sized enterprise reveals significant potential for cost savings. Which of the following strategies best balances immediate cost reduction with long-term operational stability and performance integrity within a typical enterprise cloud deployment framework? Option A. Conduct a detailed analysis of current resource utilization patterns and performance metrics to identify specific areas of overprovisioning or inefficiency. Then implement targeted right-sizing and scaling adjustments in a phased approach, validating each change before proceeding. Option B. Deploy automated scripts to dynamically scale down all non-critical resources during off-peak hours without prior performance testing or validation of their impact on essential services. Option C. Immediately implement aggressive right-sizing across all cloud resources based on average utilization figures to achieve maximum cost savings within the first billing cycle. Option D. Migrate all workloads to the lowest cost cloud service tiers available, regardless of application performance requirements or data residency considerations, to minimize direct infrastructure expenditure. Correct answer is A. Conduct a detailed analysis of current resource utilization patterns and performance metrics to identify specific areas of overprovisioning or inefficiency. Then implement targeted right-sizing and scaling adjustments in a phased approach, validating each change before proceeding. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud adoption, where an organization seeks to optimize its cloud infrastructure for cost and performance. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate benefits of cost savings with potential long-term impacts on service availability, security, and compliance, all within the context of the Cisco networking, on-premise and cloud solutions, OCSE, exams implied regulatory environment, which would typically align with general IT best practices and data protection principles, without specifying a particular jurisdiction. Careful judgment is required to ensure that optimization efforts do not inadvertently violate service-level agreements, SLAs, introduce security vulnerabilities, or compromise data integrity. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a holistic and phased strategy. It begins with a thorough assessment of current resource utilization and performance metrics. This data-driven foundation allows for informed decisions about which resources are truly overprovisioned or inefficient. Implementing optimizations in a controlled, phased manner, starting with non-critical workloads, minimizes risk. Continuous monitoring and validation after each phase ensure that performance targets are met, and that no unintended negative consequences arise. This aligns with general IT governance principles of risk management and change control, ensuring that changes are deliberate, measured, and validated. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on aggressive cost reduction by immediately right-sizing all resources without adequate performance analysis is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to underprovisioning, resulting in performance degradation, service outages, and potential breaches of SLAs. Such an approach fails to consider the operational impact and could lead to increased support costs and customer dissatisfaction, indirectly creating compliance risks if service availability is a contractual obligation. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing broad, untested automation scripts for resource scaling without proper validation is also professionally unsound. While automation is key to optimization, deploying it without rigorous testing can lead to unpredictable behavior, such as rapid deprovisioning of essential resources or overprovisioning that negates cost savings. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to manage change effectively, potentially leading to system instability and security vulnerabilities. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes migrating to the cheapest available cloud services without considering compatibility, performance requirements, or data residency implications is also flawed. This demonstrates a superficial understanding of cloud optimization, focusing only on the sticker price rather than the total cost of ownership and operational effectiveness. It risks introducing compatibility issues, performance bottlenecks, and potential regulatory noncompliance if data residency laws are not considered. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the business objectives and constraints. 2. Conduct a comprehensive assessment of the current environment. 3. Identify specific areas for optimization based on data. 4. Develop a phased implementation plan with clear rollback strategies. 5. Prioritize risk mitigation and validation at each stage. 6. Continuously monitor and iterate based on performance and cost data. 7. Ensure all changes align with security and compliance requirements. Question 2. The assessment process reveals that the current manual process for provisioning user access to on-premise and cloud resources is time-consuming and prone to errors, impacting overall IT operational efficiency. A proposed solution involves automating this provisioning process. Which of the following strategies best aligns with optimizing this process while adhering to best practices for on-premise and cloud solutions? Option A. Implement an automated provisioning solution immediately after a brief review of its core functionality, prioritizing rapid deployment to address the identified efficiency bottleneck. Option B. Develop a comprehensive plan that includes a thorough analysis of current access control policies, a risk assessment of the proposed automation, validation against relevant security and compliance frameworks, and a phased rollout with stakeholder buy-in. Option C. Deploy a script to automate provisioning that bypasses existing approval workflows to expedite the process, with the intention of formalizing approvals later. Option D. Automate the provisioning process by integrating it directly with the HR system without consulting the security team, assuming that HR data is inherently secure. The correct answer is A. Implement an automated provisioning solution immediately after a brief review of its core functionality, prioritizing rapid deployment to address the identified efficiency bottleneck. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational efficiency with the long-term implications of process changes on security and compliance. The OCSE exam emphasizes on-premise and cloud solutions, implying a need to consider how process optimization in one environment might impact the other, especially concerning data handling and access controls. Careful judgment is required to ensure that optimization efforts do not inadvertently create security vulnerabilities or violate regulatory mandates. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding of existing processes, potential impacts, and regulatory requirements before implementing changes. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT management and cybersecurity best practices, which mandate risk assessment and compliance checks. By involving stakeholders and documenting changes, it ensures transparency, accountability, and adherence to established governance frameworks, which are critical for maintaining a secure and compliant operational environment. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed of implementation without proper validation risks introducing security gaps. For instance, automating a process without verifying its adherence to data privacy regulations, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the exam's implied jurisdiction, or equivalent U.S. regulations like HIPAA for healthcare data, could lead to significant legal and financial penalties. Another incorrect approach that bypasses security reviews might overlook vulnerabilities that could be exploited, leading to data breaches. This directly contravenes the security-first principles expected in managing on-premise and cloud solutions. Failing to document changes or obtain necessary approvals can also lead to audit failures and a lack of traceability, which are serious compliance issues. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making framework that includes 1. Understanding the current state and identifying bottlenecks. 2. Researching and evaluating potential solutions, considering their impact on security, compliance, and existing infrastructure. 3. Conducting a risk assessment for each proposed solution. 4. Piloting and testing changes in a controlled environment. 5. Documenting all changes and obtaining necessary approvals. 6. Implementing changes with clear rollback plans and continuous monitoring. This systematic approach ensures that process optimization is achieved responsibly and sustainably. Question 3. The monitoring system demonstrates a consistent increase in latency for users accessing a critical on-premise application hosted on a Cisco OCSE server, with no corresponding increase in CPU or memory utilization on the server itself. What is the most effective and compliant approach to diagnose and resolve this issue? Option A. Immediately initiate a full system reboot of the Cisco OCSE server to clear any potential transient issues affecting network performance. Option B. Begin a comprehensive reconfiguration of the application's code to optimize its network communication protocols, assuming a software-level inefficiency. Option C. Analyze network traffic patterns and packet captures between the user subnet and the application server, examining firewall logs and router performance metrics for any anomalies or bottlenecks. Option D. Focus exclusively on increasing the bandwidth of the user's local area network, LAN, to alleviate perceived congestion. The correct answer is C. Analyze network traffic patterns and packet captures between the user subnet and the application server, examining firewall logs and router performance metrics for any anomalies or bottlenecks. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT operations where performance degradation impacts user experience and business operations. The professional challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the root cause of the latency without disrupting ongoing services or introducing new security vulnerabilities. The need for a systematic and compliant approach is paramount, especially when dealing with cloud-based solutions where shared responsibility models and specific service level agreements, SLAs, are in effect. Misdiagnosis can lead to wasted resources, prolonged downtime, and potential breaches of contractual obligations or regulatory requirements related to service availability and data integrity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased, evidence-based investigation that prioritizes non-intrusive methods and adheres to established change management and security protocols. This aligns with best practices for process optimization in cloud environments, emphasizing the importance of understanding the full scope of the issue before implementing changes. By first analyzing logs and performance metrics, then correlating them with recent changes and consulting cloud provider documentation, the IT professional can identify the most probable cause. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of introducing further instability or security risks and ensures that any subsequent remediation steps are targeted and effective. It also supports compliance with potential regulatory frameworks that mandate due diligence in system management and incident response. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing immediate, broad network configuration changes without a clear understanding of the root cause is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such actions can inadvertently violate security policies, disrupt other critical services, and lead to data loss or corruption, which could have legal ramifications depending on the data's nature and applicable regulations. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and adherence to change management processes, which are often mandated by compliance standards. Blindly escalating the issue to the cloud provider without performing initial troubleshooting steps is also professionally unsound. While cloud providers offer support, they expect customers to have conducted basic diagnostics. This can lead to delays in resolution and potentially incur unnecessary support costs. Ethically, it represents a failure to exercise professional responsibility and a lack of commitment to efficient problem solving. It also bypasses the opportunity to build internal expertise in diagnosing and resolving common cloud infrastructure issues. Focusing solely on end-user device troubleshooting without considering the network infrastructure or cloud service performance ignores a significant portion of the potential problem space. This can lead to a misallocation of resources and a failure to address the actual bottleneck, potentially violating SLAs and leading to continued service degradation. It also fails to uphold the professional obligation to investigate all plausible causes systematically. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured problem-solving methodology. This typically involves 1. Problem identification and scoping. Clearly define the symptoms and impact. 2. Information gathering. Collect relevant data from monitoring tools, logs, and user reports. 3. Hypothesis generation. Formulate potential causes based on the gathered information. 4. Hypothesis testing. Systematically test hypotheses using non-disruptive methods first, escalating to more intrusive methods only when necessary and with proper authorization. 5. Solution implementation. Apply the most effective and least disruptive solution. 6. Verification and documentation. Confirm the resolution and document the process and findings. This iterative process, combined with adherence to organizational policies and relevant regulatory guidelines, ensures efficient, secure, and compliant resolution of technical issues. Question 4. Which approach would be most effective for optimizing the performance of a hybrid cloud network supporting critical business applications, considering both on-premise and cloud components? Option A. Address performance issues reactively as they occur, without proactive monitoring or a strategic optimization plan. Option B. Focus exclusively on optimizing cloud-based resources, neglecting the performance of the on-premise infrastructure. Option C. Perform a lift and shift of all on-premise workloads to the cloud without prior analysis or re-architecture. Option D. Implement a phased optimization strategy based on comprehensive monitoring and data analysis of both on-premise and cloud environments. The correct answer is D. Implement a phased optimization strategy based on comprehensive monitoring and data analysis of both on-premise and cloud environments. Explanation: scenario analysis. A network administrator is tasked with optimizing the performance of a hybrid cloud environment that supports critical business applications. The challenge lies in balancing the on-premise infrastructure's stability and security with the scalability and agility offered by the cloud. Misjudging the optimization strategy could lead to performance degradation, increased operational costs, security vulnerabilities, and non-compliance with data residency regulations, impacting business continuity and customer trust. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a phased approach to performance optimization, starting with comprehensive monitoring and analysis of both on-premise and cloud components, represents best professional practice. This involves identifying bottlenecks, resource utilization patterns, and application dependencies. Based on this data, targeted optimizations can be applied, such as right-sizing cloud instances, optimizing network traffic flow between on-premise and cloud, and leveraging cloud-native services where appropriate. This data-driven iterative process ensures that changes are validated, minimizing risk and maximizing efficiency. From a regulatory perspective, this approach allows for continuous assessment of compliance with data sovereignty and privacy laws, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the exam's implied jurisdiction, though the prompt strictly forbids mentioning specific jurisdictions beyond the exam scope, so we focus on the principle of compliance. By ensuring data handling aligns with defined policies throughout the optimization lifecycle. Incorrect approach is analysis. A reactive approach, addressing performance issues only when they arise without proactive monitoring or a strategic plan, is professionally unacceptable. This leads to firefighting, increased downtime, and potentially costly emergency fixes. It also creates a significant regulatory risk, as critical performance metrics related to service availability or data processing times might be violated without detection, leading to potential breaches of service-level agreements, SLAs, or regulatory mandates. Implementing a lift and shift of all on-premise workloads to the cloud without thorough analysis or re-architecture is also a flawed strategy. While seemingly quick, it often fails to leverage cloud benefits, leading to inefficient resource utilization and higher costs. This approach can also introduce unforeseen security gaps and compliance issues if cloud security configurations are not meticulously managed according to best practices and relevant regulations. Focusing solely on cloud-based optimizations while neglecting the on-premise infrastructure would be a mistake. The interconnectedness of a hybrid environment means that on-premise performance directly impacts the overall system. Ignoring this component can lead to a false sense of optimization, with bottlenecks shifting rather than being resolved, and potentially creating compliance issues if on-premise data handling is not aligned with cloud policies. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a holistic, data-driven, and iterative methodology for process optimization in hybrid environments. This involves establishing clear performance baselines, continuous monitoring, risk assessment, and phased implementation of changes. Regular review and validation against business objectives and regulatory requirements are paramount. The decision-making process should prioritize solutions that enhance efficiency, security, and compliance while minimizing disruption and cost. Question 5. The review process indicates that the current hybrid cloud infrastructure deployment and management workflows are experiencing significant delays and are not consistently meeting audit requirements. Which approach would best optimize these processes while ensuring strict adherence to regulatory frameworks governing data integrity and security? Option A. Focus solely on reducing infrastructure costs by deprovisioning resources aggressively, without considering the impact on data availability and regulatory compliance. Option B. Consolidate all on-premise infrastructure into a single cloud provider without a detailed risk assessment or phased transition plan. Option C. Accelerate the deployment of new cloud services by bypassing detailed pre-deployment security reviews and relying on post-deployment manual audits. Option D. Implement a phased migration strategy for on-premise to cloud services, incorporating automated compliance checks and continuous monitoring throughout each phase. The correct answer is D. Implement a phased migration strategy for on-premise to cloud services, incorporating automated compliance checks and continuous monitoring throughout each phase. Explanation. The review process indicates a need to optimize the deployment and management of on-premise and cloud solutions within a regulated environment. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing operational efficiency with strict adherence to regulatory frameworks governing data handling, security, and service availability. The chosen approach must not only improve process speed and resource utilization, but also demonstrably meet compliance mandates, which often involve detailed documentation, audit trails, and specific security controls. The correct approach, focusing on a phased migration with robust monitoring and automated compliance checks, represents best professional practice because it systematically reduces risk. A phased migration allows for thorough testing and validation at each stage, minimizing disruption and ensuring that compliance requirements are met before proceeding. Automated compliance checks provide continuous assurance that the deployed solutions adhere to regulatory standards, reducing the likelihood of audit failures and associated penalties. This proactive and controlled method aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible technology deployment mandated by regulatory bodies. An incorrect approach that prioritizes rapid, unmonodic deployment without adequate validation or automated checks poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. This could lead to data breaches, unauthorized access, or service disruptions that violate data privacy laws e.g. GDPR if applicable to the exam's jurisdiction, or equivalent U.S. regulations like HIPAA for healthcare data, and service-level agreements. Such failures can result in substantial fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach, relying solely on manual compliance audits after deployment, is inefficient and prone to human error. This reactive stance fails to provide real-time assurance and increases the risk of non-compliance going undetected until a critical incident or formal audit, which is ethically questionable and professionally negligent. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape. This involves identifying all relevant laws, industry standards, and organizational policies. Next, assess the current processes for bottlenecks and inefficiencies, mapping them against compliance requirements. Then, evaluate potential solutions based on their ability to improve efficiency and maintain or enhance compliance. Prioritize solutions that offer automation for both operational tasks and compliance verification. Finally, implement solutions in a controlled, phased manner with continuous monitoring and regular audits to ensure ongoing adherence to both operational goals and regulatory obligations. Question 6. The analysis reveals that a network engineer is responsible for deploying a new cloud-based intrusion detection system, IDs, for a U.S.-based healthcare organization. The organization handles protected health information (PHI) and must comply with HIPAA regulations. The engineer has identified a solution that offers advanced threat detection capabilities, but has not yet been fully vetted against specific HIPAA security rule requirements for data encryption in transit and at rest. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Implement the cloud IDS using default security settings and rely on the cloud provider's general compliance statements without specific verification against the organization's HIPAA obligations. Option B. Proceed with the deployment of the cloud IDS, prioritizing its advanced threat detection features, and address HIPAA compliance requirements post-implementation through configuration adjustments. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive security audit of the proposed cloud IDS solution, ensuring it meets all HIPAA security rule mandates for PHI protection, including encryption standards, before proceeding with deployment. Option D. Deploy the cloud IDS in a limited, non-production environment to assess its threat detection capabilities, deferring any detailed HIPAA compliance checks until the solution is proven technically effective. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the deployment of the cloud IDS, prioritizing its advanced threat detection features, and address HIPAA compliance requirements post-implementation through configuration adjustments. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario where a network engineer is tasked with implementing a new cloud-based security solution for a financial services firm operating under U.S. regulations. The situation is professionally challenging due to the inherent complexity of integrating on-premise and cloud environments, the critical nature of financial data security, and the stringent regulatory compliance requirements mandated by U.S. law, such as those enforced by the SEC and FINRA. The engineer must balance technical efficacy with legal and ethical obligations to protect sensitive client information and maintain system integrity. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment and adherence to established security frameworks like NIST, which are widely recognized and often implicitly or explicitly required by U.S. financial regulations. This approach prioritizes a phased implementation, robust testing, and continuous monitoring, ensuring that the new solution meets both performance and compliance standards. It demonstrates best professional practice by proactively identifying and mitigating potential vulnerabilities, and ensuring that all security measures align with regulatory mandates for data protection and incident response. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and prudent risk management expected in the financial sector. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the speed of deployment without adequate security validation would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to data breaches, non-compliance with regulations like the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, or the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX, and severe financial penalties, reputational damage, and legal liabilities for the firm. Another incorrect approach, such as neglecting to document the implementation process and security configurations, would hinder auditing efforts and make it difficult to demonstrate compliance during regulatory reviews, violating principles of accountability and transparency. Furthermore, choosing a solution that does not meet specific data residency or privacy requirements stipulated by U.S. law would also constitute a critical failure. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the regulatory landscape relevant to the industry and jurisdiction. This should be followed by a comprehensive technical evaluation of potential solutions, a thorough risk assessment, and the development of a detailed implementation and testing plan. Continuous monitoring and a commitment to ongoing compliance verification are essential throughout the lifecycle of the solution. Question 7. Process analysis reveals that a new hybrid cloud solution integrating on-premise data storage with cloud-based analytics services is nearing its deployment deadline. The project team is under significant pressure to launch quickly. Which of the following approaches to risk assessment would best ensure the security and integrity of this solution while meeting business objectives? Option A. Defer the comprehensive risk assessment until after the solution has been fully deployed and is operational, using post-deployment audits to identify issues. Option B. Perform a quick, high-level risk assessment focusing only on the most apparent and immediate threats to avoid delaying the deployment. Option C. Rely primarily on the security certifications and attestations provided by the cloud service provider to cover all security risks associated with the cloud portion of the solution. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment that identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities across both the on-premise and cloud components, and integrate mitigation strategies into the deployment plan before launch. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment that identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities across both the on-premise and cloud components, and integrate mitigation strategies into the deployment plan before launch. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, balancing the need for rapid deployment and agility with robust risk assessment. The pressure to deliver new services quickly can lead to shortcuts in security processes. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that risk assessment is not an afterthought but an integral part of the solution lifecycle, even under tight deadlines. This requires a proactive and systematic approach to identifying, analyzing, and mitigating potential threats to the on-premise and cloud solutions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves integrating a comprehensive risk assessment framework into the early stages of the solution development lifecycle. This means identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities specific to both the on-premise infrastructure and the chosen cloud services. It requires understanding the data flows, access controls, and potential attack vectors for each component. By performing this assessment before deployment, Potential risks can be identified and addressed through appropriate security controls, architectural changes, or policy adjustments. This aligns with best practices for secure development and operational readiness, ensuring compliance with general security principles and potentially specific regulatory requirements for data protection and system integrity, even if not explicitly stated in the prompt's limited jurisdiction. The focus is on a proactive, preventative posture. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to rely solely on post-deployment security audits. This is reactive and fails to prevent potential breaches or disruptions that could occur during the initial operational phase. It represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure, as it prioritizes speed over security, potentially exposing sensitive data or critical systems to undue risk. Such an approach could violate principles of due diligence and responsible system management. Another incorrect approach is to assume that the cloud provider's security measures are sufficient for all organizational risks. Cloud providers offer robust security. The shared responsibility model means the organization is still accountable for configuring and managing security within its cloud environment, as well as securing its on-premise components. Delegating all risk assessment to the provider is a failure to understand and fulfill organizational security obligations, potentially leading to compliance issues and security gaps. A third incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial risk assessment that only considers obvious threats. This fails to identify more subtle or complex risks, such as insider threats, supply chain vulnerabilities, or misconfigurations that can have significant impacts. A superficial assessment is ethically questionable, as it does not demonstrate a commitment to thorough due diligence and may lead to inadequate security controls, leaving the organization exposed. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to security. This involves understanding the business context, identifying critical assets, and then systematically assessing the threats and vulnerabilities that could impact those assets. For on-premise and cloud solutions, this means considering the unique security characteristics of each environment and how they interact. A structured risk assessment methodology, such as NIST SB 800-30 or ISO 31000, provides a framework for this process. Decision-making should prioritize the implementation of controls that reduce risk to an acceptable level, balancing security requirements with operational needs and business objectives. Continuous monitoring and periodic reassessment are also crucial to adapt to evolving threats and changes in the environment. Question 8. Benchmark analysis indicates that a financial services firm is planning a rapid migration of its customer data management system to a public cloud environment to improve scalability and reduce operational costs. The firm has selected a cloud provider that advertises broad compliance certifications. Which of the following approaches best ensures adherence to data residency and privacy regulations during this migration? Option A. Rely on the cloud provider's standard contractual terms to cover all data residency and privacy obligations, without conducting an independent assessment of data flows. Option B. Conduct a detailed data flow mapping and risk assessment, verifying the cloud provider's specific compliance certifications against the firm's regulatory obligations for customer data, and implementing necessary controls before migration. Option C. Proceed with the migration based on the cloud provider's general compliance certifications, assuming they adequately cover all data protection requirements for financial services customer data. Option D. Prioritize the speed of migration and cost savings, deferring any detailed data residency and privacy impact assessments until after the system is fully operational in the cloud. The correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed data flow mapping and risk assessment, verifying the cloud provider's specific compliance certifications against the firm's regulatory obligations for customer data, and implementing necessary controls before migration. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid cloud adoption and the need for thorough impact assessment, particularly concerning data residency and compliance. Organizations often face pressure to migrate services quickly to leverage cloud benefits, but overlooking the potential impact on regulatory adherence can lead to significant legal and financial repercussions. The complexity arises from identifying all relevant data flows, understanding the specific data protection requirements of the target cloud environment, and ensuring that these requirements align with the organization's obligations under applicable regulations. The lift and shift approach, while seemingly expedient, often fails to account for these nuances, making a proactive and detailed impact assessment crucial. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive data flow mapping and risk assessment specifically tailored to the chosen cloud service provider and the data types being migrated. This aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, as mandated by regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, if the exam jurisdiction implies EU/UK data protection principles. It requires understanding where data will be processed and stored, the security measures in place at the cloud provider, and how these align with the organization's compliance obligations. This proactive identification of potential compliance gaps before migration allows for the implementation of appropriate controls, such as data anonymization, encryption, or contractual safeguards, thereby mitigating risks and ensuring ongoing regulatory adherence. This demonstrates a commitment to responsible data handling and risk management. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proceeding with migration without a detailed understanding of data residency implications and the cloud provider's compliance certifications is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach disregards the principle of accountability, where the organization remains responsible for ensuring data protection, regardless of where it is processed. It can lead to violations of data localization laws, unauthorized cross-border data transfers, and breaches of data subject rights, all of which carry substantial penalties. Assuming that standard cloud service providers' general compliance certifications automatically cover all specific regulatory requirements for the organization's data is another failure. Compliance is context-dependent. A provider might be compliant with general standards, but specific industry regulations or data types may have additional, stricter requirements that are not met by the standard offering. This oversight can result in non-compliance and reputational damage. Relying solely on the cloud provider's contractual assurances without independent verification or a clear understanding of the shared responsibility model is also problematic. While contracts are important, they do not absolve the organization of its due diligence. A failure to understand the division of responsibilities for security and compliance can lead to critical gaps being overlooked, resulting in regulatory breaches. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to cloud migration. This involves 1. Identifying all data to be migrated and classifying it based on sensitivity and regulatory requirements. 2. Thoroughly researching the chosen cloud service provider's compliance posture, including relevant certifications and attestations. 3. Conducting a detailed data flow analysis to understand where data will reside and be processed. 4. Performing a gap analysis between the organization's regulatory obligations and the cloud provider's capabilities. 5. Developing and implementing a remediation plan to address any identified gaps before or during migration. 6. Establishing ongoing monitoring and auditing processes to ensure continued compliance. Question 9. During the evaluation of a client's on-premise to cloud migration strategy, a network engineer discovers that the client's preferred, lower-cost cloud service provider offers a less robust security posture compared to other options. The client is primarily focused on minimizing immediate expenditure. The engineer is aware that the proposed solution, while cheaper, introduces significant vulnerabilities that could expose sensitive client data. What is the most ethically and professionally responsible course of action for the network engineer? Option A. Proceed with the client's preferred provider's solution without further comment, as the client has the final decision-making authority on budget and technology choices. Option B. Advise the client that the preferred provider's security posture is unacceptable and recommend a more secure, albeit more expensive, alternative, explaining the long-term benefits and risks of each. Option C. Recommend the client's preferred provider, but clearly document the identified security risks, and advise the client to implement additional compensating controls at their own expense and risk. Option D. Suggest a hybrid approach where some sensitive data remains on-premise with enhanced security, while less critical data is migrated to the cheaper cloud provider to balance cost and security. The correct answer is C. Recommend the client's preferred provider but clearly document the identified security risks and advise the client to implement additional compensating controls at their own expense and risk. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge, because it involves a conflict between a client's immediate desire for a cost-saving solution and the network engineer's ethical and professional responsibility to recommend a secure and compliant design. The engineer must navigate the pressure to compromise on security for financial reasons, while adhering to industry best practices and potential regulatory considerations relevant to on-premise and cloud solutions. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes security and compliance, which are foundational to reliable and trustworthy network solutions. By recommending a solution that meets current security standards and anticipates future threats, the engineer upholds their professional integrity and protects the client from potential data breaches, operational disruptions, and regulatory penalties. This aligns with the general principles of responsible IT practice, which emphasize due diligence and risk mitigation. An incorrect approach that suggests implementing the less secure, cheaper option without adequate risk assessment or mitigation would be professionally unacceptable. This failure would violate the principle of providing competent and ethical advice. It could lead to significant security vulnerabilities, potentially exposing sensitive client data to unauthorized access or modification. Depending on the nature of the client's data and operations, this could also contravene data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the client's operations, though for this exam, we focus on general principles of secure design applicable across jurisdictions. Another incorrect approach, which involves agreeing to the client's request without fully understanding the implications or attempting to educate the client on the risks, demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility. This passive acceptance of a potentially insecure design could result in future remediation costs and reputational damage for both the engineer and their firm. It fails to exercise professional judgment and advocate for a robust solution. The professional reasoning framework for similar situations involves a multi-step process. 1. Understand the client's requirements and constraints thoroughly. 2. Identify potential technical solutions and their associated risks and benefits. 3. Assess each solution against security best practices, compliance requirements, and potential future needs. 4. Clearly communicate the risks and benefits of each option to the client, providing expert recommendations. 5. Document all discussions, recommendations, and decisions. 6. If a client insists on a less secure option, ensure they provide written acknowledgement of the risks involved, thereby transferring some of the liability while still fulfilling the professional duty to inform. Question 10. System analysis indicates that a vendor offering a cloud-based network management solution has provided a demonstration and a proposed configuration that appears to meet the organization's stated requirements. However, the vendor's representative has emphasized the ease of integration and the proprietary advantages of their specific platform, suggesting that deviating from their recommended setup would negate these benefits. The IT manager is responsible for evaluating this solution alongside other potential options. What is the most professional and ethically sound approach to proceed? Option A. Immediately dismiss the vendor's solution, assuming that any solution heavily promoted with proprietary advantages is likely to be overly complex or vendor-locked, and focus solely on solutions from vendors with a more open approach. Option B. Request a revised proposal from the vendor that removes all mentions of proprietary advantages and focuses solely on standard features to ensure a neutral comparison. Option C. Accept the vendor's proposed configuration as is, given their assurances of ease of integration and proprietary advantages, to expedite deployment and leverage their expertise. Option D. Conduct an independent, objective evaluation of the vendor's proposed solution against the organization's defined technical and business requirements, comparing it rigorously with other viable solutions based on documented criteria, and presenting a transparent comparison of all options. The correct answer is D. Conduct an independent, objective evaluation of the vendor's proposed solution against the organization's defined technical and business requirements, comparing it rigorously with other viable solutions based on documented criteria, and presenting a transparent comparison of all options. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a vendor's desire to promote their product and the IT professional's responsibility to provide objective, unbiased recommendations. The core of the challenge lies in maintaining trust and integrity when faced with potential financial incentives or pressure to favor a specific solution, even if it's not the most suitable for the organization's actual needs. The OCSE exam emphasizes understanding on-premise and cloud solutions, which often involves evaluating diverse vendor offerings. Therefore, an ethical approach is paramount to ensure that technology decisions are driven by technical merit and business requirements, not by external influence. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the client's, in this case, the employer's, best interests above all else. Adhering to a structured evaluation process, documenting findings objectively, and presenting all viable options with their pros and cons, regardless of vendor affiliation, demonstrates a commitment to transparency and due diligence. This aligns with professional codes of conduct that mandate honesty, integrity, and acting in the best interest of one's employer or client. It also ensures compliance with internal procurement policies that typically require a fair and competitive evaluation of solutions. An incorrect approach of accepting the vendor's pre-configured solution without independent verification would be a significant ethical and professional failure. This bypasses essential due diligence, potentially leading to the adoption of a solution that is over-engineered, under-featured, or incompatible with existing infrastructure, ultimately costing the organization more in the long run. It also creates a dependency on the vendor's claims, undermining the IT department's credibility and technical authority. Another incorrect approach, that of immediately dismissing the vendor's solution due to their sales pitch, is also professionally unsound. While vigilance is necessary, outright rejection without a fair evaluation is biased and prevents the discovery of potentially valuable features or innovative approaches the vendor might offer. This can lead to missed opportunities and a less competitive technology landscape for the organization. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a systematic, evidence-based decision-making process. This includes clearly defining business and technical requirements, conducting thorough market research, issuing requests for proposals (RFP) to multiple vendors, establishing objective evaluation criteria, performing hands-on testing or proof of concepts, documenting all findings and recommendations, and presenting a transparent comparison of all evaluated solutions to stakeholders. This process ensures that the final decision is well-informed, defensible, and aligned with the organization's strategic goals. Question 11. Market research demonstrates that many organizations are accelerating their adoption of cloud-based solutions for networking and data storage. When migrating sensitive healthcare data to a cloud environment, which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with U.S. federal regulations like HIPAA? Option A. Migrating all data to the cloud without first assessing the regulatory requirements, assuming that cloud technology inherently provides a secure and compliant environment. Option B. Selecting a cloud service provider based primarily on their competitive pricing and broad service offerings, assuming their general reputation implies regulatory adherence. Option C. Conducting thorough due diligence on the cloud service provider's specific compliance certifications, audit reports, and entering into a business associate agreement (BA) where applicable, while also implementing internal data governance policies. Option D. Relying solely on the cloud service provider's marketing materials to confirm their compliance with HIPAA, without independent verification or specific contractual agreements. The correct answer is B. Selecting a cloud service provider based primarily on their competitive pricing and broad service offerings, assuming their general reputation implies regulatory adherence. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to data privacy and regulatory compliance in a cloud environment, specifically within the context of the U.S. regulatory framework applicable to the Cisco 500-560 OCSE exam. The core difficulty lies in balancing the benefits of cloud adoption with the stringent requirements of data protection laws like HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and potentially others depending on the specific data handled. Organizations must ensure that their cloud service providers, CSP, meet these compliance standards and that their own internal practices align with these regulations. Failure to do so can result in significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The complexity arises from the shared responsibility model in cloud computing, where both the organization and the CSP have distinct but interconnected compliance obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough due diligence process to select a CSP that demonstrably adheres to relevant U.S. data privacy regulations, such as HIPAA for healthcare data. This includes verifying the CSP certification, audit reports e.g. SOC 2 Type Roman 2, and their willingness to enter into a business associate agreement BA, if applicable. Furthermore, the organization must implement robust internal controls and policies to manage data access, encryption, and retention within the cloud environment, ensuring that these practices align with regulatory mandates. This proactive and comprehensive approach minimizes risk and ensures that the organization remains compliant throughout its cloud journey. It represents best professional practice because it prioritizes regulatory adherence and data security from the outset, demonstrating a commitment to responsible data stewardship. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that simply migrating data to a reputable CSP automatically confers compliance. This overlooks the organization's own responsibilities in configuring and managing the cloud environment securely and in accordance with regulations. The CSP's compliance does not absolve the organization of its obligations. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize cost savings or perceived ease of implementation over regulatory due diligence. Choosing a CSP solely based on price without verifying their compliance posture or understanding the implications for data privacy is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This can lead to the handling of sensitive data in non-compliant environments, exposing the organization to severe penalties. A third incorrect approach is to neglect the importance of a business associate agreement, BA, when dealing with protected health information, FI, under HIPAA. Without a BAA, the CSP is not legally obligated to protect PHI on behalf of the covered entity, creating a direct violation of HIPAA. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of critical regulatory requirements. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to cloud adoption. This involves identifying the types of data being migrated, understanding the applicable U.S. regulations, e.g., HIPAA, GDPR if applicable to U.S. entities handling EU citizen data, CCPA for California data, and then rigorously assessing potential CSPs against these requirements. Key steps include 1. Data classification. Understand the sensitivity and regulatory implications of the data. 2. Regulatory mapping. Identify all relevant U.S. federal and state laws and regulations. 3. CSP due diligence. Scrutinize CSP compliance certifications, audit reports, and contractual terms. 4. Contractual agreements. Ensure appropriate agreements like BAAs are in place. 5. Internal controls. Implement and maintain robust internal policies and procedures for cloud data management. 6. Continuous monitoring. Regularly review CSP compliance and internal practices. Question 12. Regulatory review indicates that a financial services firm is planning to migrate sensitive customer transaction data to a public cloud environment. The firm's primary objective is to enhance scalability and reduce operational costs. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with data protection regulations while achieving these objectives? Option A. Conduct a thorough due diligence on potential cloud service providers, verifying their compliance certifications, data residency options, and contractual agreements against specific financial data protection regulations. Option B. Rely solely on the cloud service provider's contractual assurances regarding data security and privacy without independently verifying their implementation of compliance controls. Option C. Prioritize the migration of non-sensitive data first and address the compliance requirements for sensitive data in a later phase of the cloud adoption strategy. Option D. Select a cloud service provider based on the lowest cost and fastest deployment time, assuming their standard security measures are adequate for financial data. The correct answer is D. Select a cloud service provider based on the lowest cost and fastest deployment time, assuming their standard security measures are adequate for financial data. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid cloud adoption and the stringent data privacy regulations governing financial institutions. The need to leverage cloud services for competitive advantage must be balanced against the absolute requirement to protect sensitive customer data. Misinterpreting or inadequately addressing these regulatory mandates can lead to severe financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The complexity arises from the shared responsibility model in cloud computing, where the organization remains accountable for data protection, even when services are managed by a third-party provider. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough due diligence process that prioritizes regulatory compliance from the outset of cloud migration planning. This includes identifying all applicable regulations, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, or specific financial industry regulations like PCI DSS if applicable to the data handled, understanding their implications for cloud deployments, and ensuring that the chosen cloud service provider, CSP, demonstrably meets these requirements. This involves scrutinizing the CSP's security certifications, data residency options, data processing agreements, and incident response capabilities. A proactive, risk-based approach that embeds compliance into the design and implementation phases is essential for demonstrating due diligence and mitigating legal and financial risks. This aligns with the principle of privacy by design and security by design, which are fundamental to regulatory frameworks governing data protection. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that the CSP's standard security measures are sufficient without independent verification. This fails to acknowledge the organization's ultimate responsibility for data protection and can lead to noncompliance if the CSP's controls do not fully align with specific regulatory mandates, or if there are gaps in the shared responsibility model. This approach represents a significant regulatory failure by neglecting due diligence. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize cost savings and speed of deployment over regulatory adherence. While efficiency is important, it cannot supersede legal obligations. Choosing a cloud solution solely based on the lowest cost or fastest implementation, without a comprehensive assessment of its compliance posture, is a direct violation of regulatory requirements and ethical responsibilities. This demonstrates a failure in professional judgment and a disregard for legal frameworks. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on contractual assurances from the CSP, without understanding the practical implementation of their compliance controls. Contracts are important, but they do not absolve the organization of its responsibility to ensure that the CSP's operations actually meet regulatory standards. This can lead to a false sense of security and subsequent noncompliance when audits or incidents reveal discrepancies. This represents a failure to translate contractual obligations into tangible compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with cloud solutions for regulated industries must adopt a systematic and risk-aware decision-making process. This process should begin with a clear understanding of the regulatory landscape relevant to the organization's data and operations. Next, a comprehensive risk assessment should be conducted, identifying potential compliance gaps and vulnerabilities associated with cloud adoption. This should be followed by a rigorous evaluation of potential CSPs, focusing on their compliance certifications, security practices, and contractual terms, ensuring they align with identified regulatory requirements. The decision should be based on a balanced consideration of security, compliance, functionality, and cost, with compliance being a non-negotiable prerequisite. Regular monitoring and auditing of the cloud environment post-migration are also critical to maintain ongoing compliance. Question 13. The control framework reveals that an organization operating under U.S. federal regulations, specifically those pertaining to financial data protection, is considering migrating sensitive customer transaction data to a public cloud service. The organization needs to ensure that the chosen cloud solution meets the stringent requirements for data residency, access control, and auditability mandated by these regulations. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance and professional best practices for this scenario? Option A. Prioritize the cloud provider offering the lowest cost for storage and processing, with the understanding that the organization can implement its own security measures to compensate for any potential compliance gaps. Option B. Conduct a thorough due diligence process to identify a cloud provider that explicitly demonstrates compliance with the specific U.S. federal regulations governing financial data, including detailed documentation on data residency options, robust access control mechanisms, and comprehensive audit logging capabilities, and then implement a robust configuration and ongoing monitoring strategy. Option C. Rely on the cloud provider's standard terms of service, which typically include clauses about data security, and assume that these are sufficient to meet the specific and detailed requirements of U.S. federal financial data regulations. Option D. Select a cloud provider that offers a broad range of compliance certifications, and assume that these certifications automatically satisfy all specific U.S. federal regulatory requirements for financial data. The correct answer is D. Select a cloud provider that offers a broad range of compliance certifications, and assume that these certifications automatically satisfy all specific U.S. federal regulatory requirements for financial data. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, balancing the agility and cost-effectiveness of cloud services with the stringent compliance requirements of on-premise regulations. The professional must navigate the shared responsibility model of cloud providers and ensure that the chosen cloud solution adheres to the specific data residency and privacy mandates applicable to the organization's operating jurisdiction. The challenge lies in the potential for misinterpretation of cloud provider compliance statements, the complexity of configuring cloud services to meet specific regulatory controls, and the risk of data exfiltration or unauthorized access if not properly managed. The correct approach emphasizes a proactive, risk-based strategy that integrates compliance from the outset. This involves a thorough understanding of the relevant regulatory framework, a detailed assessment of the cloud provider's compliance posture against those specific regulations, and the implementation of robust technical and administrative controls within the cloud environment. This approach aligns with best practices for cloud adoption, which prioritize security and compliance by design. It ensures that the organization maintains accountability for its data and its adherence to legal obligations, even when leveraging third-party infrastructure. An incorrect approach that solely relies on the cloud provider's general compliance certifications without a specific mapping to the organization's regulatory obligations is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and an abdication of responsibility. It can lead to non-compliance, resulting in substantial fines, reputational damage, and legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach, which prioritizes cost savings over a comprehensive security and compliance review, is equally problematic. This approach ignores the fundamental principle that security and compliance are not optional add-ons but integral components of any IT solution, especially in regulated environments. It creates a false sense of security and exposes the organization to unacceptable risks. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape. This is followed by a detailed evaluation of potential cloud solutions, focusing on their ability to meet specific compliance requirements, not just general certifications. A risk assessment should then be conducted to identify potential gaps and develop mitigation strategies. Finally, ongoing monitoring and auditing are crucial to ensure continuous compliance and adapt to evolving threats and regulations. Question 14. The evaluation methodology shows a critical decision point regarding the adoption of a new cloud-based customer relationship management (CRM) solution for a U.S. federal agency. The project team is eager to leverage the agility and scalability of the cloud to improve citizen service delivery. However, the CRM will handle sensitive personally identifiable information (PI) and protected health information (FI). What is the most appropriate approach to ensure compliance with relevant U.S. federal regulations and best practices for data security and privacy? Option A. Prioritize the most cost-effective cloud CRM solution that offers basic security features, assuming that any necessary regulatory compliance adjustments can be made later through custom development or additional security services. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment and compliance validation process, engaging legal and compliance teams to ensure the chosen cloud solution meets all applicable U.S. federal mandates, e.g., FISMA, NIST guidelines, for data protection and privacy before full deployment. Option C. Deploy the cloud CRM solution with maximum security features enabled by default, assuming that this will inherently satisfy all regulatory requirements without the need for specific validation against U.S. federal mandates. Option D. Proceed with the cloud CRM deployment immediately, relying on the vendor's stated compliance certifications and implementing standard security configurations, with a plan to address specific regulatory requirements post-deployment. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the cloud CRM deployment immediately, relying on the vendor's stated compliance certifications and implementing standard security configurations, with a plan to address specific regulatory requirements post-deployment. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid deployment of new cloud services and the stringent regulatory requirements for data protection and privacy, particularly within the context of U.S. federal regulations governing sensitive government data. The OCSE exam syllabus emphasizes on-premise and cloud solutions, implying a need to understand how these solutions interact with and comply with relevant legal frameworks. The professional challenge lies in balancing the business imperative for agility with the non-negotiable need for compliance, ensuring that security and privacy are not compromised in the pursuit of speed. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and compliance validation before full deployment. This aligns with the principles of security by design and privacy by design, which are foundational to U.S. federal regulations like FISMA, Federal Information Security Modernization Act, and NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, guidelines, such as the NIST SB 800-53. These frameworks mandate a risk-based approach to security, requiring agencies to identify, assess, and mitigate risks to information systems. By engaging legal and compliance teams early, the organization ensures that the chosen cloud solution meets all applicable federal mandates, including data residency, access controls, and auditability requirements, thereby preventing potential breaches, fines, and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that proceeds with deployment without adequate validation fails to adhere to the principle of due diligence mandated by U.S. federal law. This could lead to violations of data privacy laws, e.g., related to personally identifiable information or protected health information, and security standards. Specifically, it bypasses the required authorization to operate auto process, which is a critical component of FISMA compliance, where a system is formally authorized to operate after security controls have been assessed and deemed acceptable. This failure to conduct a proper risk assessment and obtain necessary approvals exposes the organization to significant legal liabilities and security vulnerabilities. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on cost reduction without considering regulatory implications, is also professionally unacceptable. While cost efficiency is a business objective, it cannot supersede legal and regulatory obligations. U.S. federal regulations often have specific requirements for data handling and security that may influence the total cost of ownership, including the need for specific certifications or security features that might not be the cheapest option. Ignoring these can lead to non-compliance, necessitating costly remediation efforts later. A third incorrect approach, relying on vendor assurances alone without independent verification, is insufficient. While reputable cloud providers offer robust security and compliance features, the ultimate responsibility for protecting government data rests with the agency or organization utilizing the cloud service. Federal regulations require organizations to understand and validate that the provider's controls meet their specific compliance obligations. Blindly trusting vendor claims without due diligence is a common pitfall that can result in significant compliance gaps. The professional reasoning process should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the regulatory landscape applicable to the data and services being migrated or deployed. Second, conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities, considering both technical and compliance aspects. Third, engage relevant stakeholders, including legal, compliance, security, and business units, to ensure all perspectives are considered. Fourth, develop a phased deployment plan that includes clear milestones for security and compliance validation. Finally, establish ongoing monitoring and auditing processes to ensure continuous adherence to regulations and security best practices. Question 15. Implementation of a new customer relationship management (CRM) system hosted on a public cloud infrastructure for a multinational corporation with operations in both the European Union and the United States. The organization handles personal data of EU citizens. The primary concern is ensuring that this personal data remains within the EU's geographical boundaries to comply with GDPR requirements, while also leveraging the scalability and cost-effectiveness of the cloud. Option A. Choose the cheapest available cloud hosting option and assume the provider's standard infrastructure will meet all data residency needs without explicit configuration or verification. Option B. Select a cloud provider that offers a specific EU region for data storage and processing, and configure the CRM instance to exclusively utilize resources within this region, ensuring contractual guarantees for data residency. Option C. Deploy the CRM system on a cloud provider's global infrastructure, relying on the provider's general security measures to protect data, without specifying a particular geographical region for data storage. Option D. Migrate the data to the cloud, and then investigate data residency options, prioritizing performance and feature availability over immediate compliance. The correct answer is B. Select a cloud provider that offers a specific EU region for data storage and processing, and configure the CRM instance to exclusively utilize resources within this region, ensuring contractual guarantees for data residency. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution implementation, ensuring data residency and compliance with data protection regulations when migrating sensitive information. The professional challenge lies in balancing the benefits of cloud scalability and agility with the stringent legal requirements governing where data can be stored and processed. Misinterpreting or overlooking these requirements can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Careful judgment is required to select a cloud provider and configuration that aligns with the organization's specific regulatory obligations. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the applicable data protection laws, such as the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, if the organization operates within or handles data of EU citizens, or equivalent national legislation. It necessitates selecting a cloud service provider that offers data centers within the required geographical regions and provides contractual assurances regarding data sovereignty and compliance. This proactive due diligence ensures that the implementation adheres to legal mandates, preventing data from being transferred to or processed in jurisdictions that do not offer an equivalent level of data protection, thereby safeguarding sensitive information and avoiding regulatory breaches. An incorrect approach of prioritizing cost savings over data residency requirements is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This demonstrates a disregard for legal obligations and the privacy rights of individuals whose data is being handled. Such an approach could lead to violations of data protection laws, resulting in substantial fines and legal action. Another incorrect approach, assuming that all cloud providers inherently comply with all data residency laws without explicit verification, is a failure of due diligence. This oversight can lead to unintentional noncompliance, as cloud provider terms of service may not always explicitly detail data location guarantees, or may offer services that inadvertently involve data processing in noncompliant regions. It also represents an ethical lapse in failing to adequately protect user data. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with identifying all applicable regulatory frameworks relevant to the data being handled. This should be followed by a comprehensive assessment of cloud service provider capabilities, specifically focusing on their data center locations, data processing policies, and contractual commitments regarding data residency. A risk-based approach is crucial, where potential noncompliance is identified and mitigated before implementation. Regular audits and ongoing monitoring of cloud configurations are also essential to maintain compliance as regulations and service offerings evolve. Question 16. Governance review demonstrates that the organization is accelerating its adoption of cloud-based solutions for critical business applications. However, there is a lack of clarity regarding the specific data residency requirements for sensitive customer data processed by these applications, and how these requirements are being met by the chosen cloud service providers. What is the most prudent next step for the IT and governance teams? Option A. Instruct the cloud service providers to provide a generic compliance statement that confirms adherence to international data protection standards, without specific verification of local residency requirements. Option B. Immediately engage legal and compliance teams to conduct a thorough assessment of all applicable data residency laws and regulations relevant to the organization's customer base and data types, and to verify the cloud provider's compliance mechanisms. Option C. Prioritize the migration of less sensitive data to the cloud first, and defer the assessment of data residency for critical applications until after the initial migration phase is complete. Option D. Proceed with the planned cloud migration for all remaining applications, assuming that major cloud providers have robust global compliance frameworks that inherently satisfy all local data residency needs. The correct answer is B. Immediately engage legal and compliance teams to conduct a thorough assessment of all applicable data residency laws and regulations relevant to the organization's customer base and data types, and to verify the cloud provider's compliance mechanisms. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid cloud adoption and the need for robust data governance, particularly concerning data residency and compliance with evolving regulatory landscapes. The OCSE exam focuses on on-premise and cloud solutions, implying an understanding of how these environments interact and the governance frameworks that apply to both. The challenge lies in balancing the agility and cost-efficiency benefits of cloud services with the imperative to protect sensitive data and adhere to legal obligations. Careful judgment is required to select a cloud strategy that is not only technologically sound, but also legally compliant and ethically responsible. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive understanding of applicable regulations before committing to a specific cloud solution. This proactive stance ensures that data residency requirements, such as those potentially governed by specific national data protection laws, e.g., GDPR if the jurisdiction were the EU, or similar national laws if a different jurisdiction were specified for the exam, are met. By engaging legal and compliance teams early, the organization can identify potential risks and implement appropriate controls, such as data localization strategies or contractual clauses with cloud providers, thereby avoiding regulatory penalties and reputational damage. This aligns with the principles of responsible data stewardship and due diligence expected in the IT industry. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with cloud migration without a thorough understanding of data residency laws would represent a significant regulatory failure. This could lead to violations of data protection statutes, resulting in substantial fines and legal action. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for customer privacy and data security. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on cost savings without considering compliance, also fails to meet regulatory obligations and exposes the organization to undue risk. This prioritizes short-term financial gains over long-term legal and ethical standing. A third incorrect approach, assuming all cloud providers are inherently compliant without verification, is a dangerous assumption that bypasses essential due diligence and can lead to unforeseen compliance gaps. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying all relevant legal and regulatory requirements pertaining to data handling and residency. This should be followed by a risk assessment that evaluates how different cloud solutions might impact compliance. Subsequently, a strategy should be developed that integrates compliance requirements into the cloud adoption plan, involving legal, compliance, and security teams throughout the process. Continuous monitoring and auditing are essential to ensure ongoing adherence to regulations. Question 17. Stakeholder feedback indicates an urgent need to deploy a new cloud-based customer relationship management (CRM) system to gain a competitive advantage. The business unit is pushing for immediate go-live, citing market pressures, and has requested that the IT department expedite all security and compliance reviews to meet an aggressive deadline. The IT department is aware that the proposed CRM solution will handle sensitive customer data, including personally identifiable information, PI. Which of the following approaches best balances the stakeholders' urgency with the imperative to adhere to regulatory frameworks governing data privacy and cloud security? Option A. Proceed with the deployment of the CRM system using the default security settings provided by the cloud vendor, and initiate a post-deployment audit to identify and address any compliance gaps at a later stage. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment and security review of the proposed CRM solution, develop and implement necessary security controls, and obtain documented compliance approvals before proceeding with a phased rollout. Option C. Implement the CRM system with minimal security configurations and defer comprehensive compliance checks until after the initial launch, prioritizing rapid deployment to meet business objectives. Option D. Rely solely on the cloud provider's standard compliance certifications, e.g., ISO 27001, SOC 2, to satisfy all regulatory requirements, assuming the provider's infrastructure is inherently secure and compliant for the organization's specific use case. The correct answer is C. Implement the CRM system with minimal security configurations and defer comprehensive compliance checks until after the initial launch, prioritizing rapid deployment to meet business objectives. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid deployment of new cloud services and the need for robust security and compliance, especially when dealing with sensitive data. The stakeholders' desire for speed, while understandable from a business perspective, directly conflicts with the regulatory obligations to protect data privacy and ensure system integrity. The IT professional must navigate this conflict by balancing business needs with legal and ethical responsibilities, requiring careful judgment and a thorough understanding of applicable regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased implementation with thorough security and compliance reviews at each stage. This aligns with the principles of security by design and privacy by design, which are fundamental to many regulatory frameworks, including those governing data protection and cloud security. By conducting risk assessments, implementing appropriate controls, and obtaining necessary approvals before full deployment, the IT professional ensures that the organization remains compliant with relevant laws and guidelines. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of data breaches, regulatory penalties, and reputational damage, representing best professional practice by embedding compliance and security into the project lifecycle. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves bypassing established security protocols and compliance checks to meet the stakeholders' aggressive timeline. This directly violates regulatory requirements that mandate due diligence in deploying new technologies, particularly those handling sensitive data. Such a failure could lead to significant legal penalties, fines, and loss of customer trust. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the organization's responsibility to protect data. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with deployment without adequate documentation of security measures and compliance efforts. Regulatory bodies often require auditable proof of compliance. The absence of such documentation makes it impossible to demonstrate adherence to regulations during an audit, leading to potential sanctions. Professionally, it indicates a lack of diligence and foresight. A third incorrect approach is to assume that cloud provider compliance certifications automatically absolve the organization of its own responsibilities. While cloud providers offer robust security, the organization remains accountable for how it configures and uses the cloud services, and for ensuring its specific use case meets all applicable regulations. Relying solely on provider certifications without internal validation is a common regulatory and ethical pitfall. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such situations should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves 1. Identifying all relevant regulatory requirements and internal policies. 2. Assessing the potential risks associated with different deployment strategies, including security vulnerabilities and compliance gaps. 3. Evaluating the business impact of both rapid deployment and a more cautious approach. 4. Communicating these risks and potential consequences clearly to stakeholders, including management and legal counsel. 5. Recommending a course of action that balances business objectives with regulatory and ethical obligations, prioritizing data protection and system integrity. Question 18. Cost-benefit analysis shows that migrating a critical on-premise application to a public cloud service offers significant upfront cost savings. However, the application handles sensitive customer data that is subject to strict data residency regulations within the organization's operating jurisdiction. Which approach best balances the immediate financial benefits with long-term operational integrity and regulatory compliance? Option A. Defer the cloud migration until a later date when the organization has more resources to dedicate to understanding complex cloud security and compliance frameworks. Option B. Proceed with the cloud migration, assuming the cloud provider's standard data protection measures are sufficient and addressing any potential data residency issues reactively if they arise. Option C. Implement the cloud migration immediately to capture the cost savings, and then retroactively implement data masking and anonymization techniques to mitigate potential data residency concerns. Option D. Conduct a thorough assessment of the cloud provider's compliance certifications and data handling policies against the specific data residency regulations, and explore hybrid cloud or private cloud options if direct public cloud migration poses compliance risks. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the cloud migration, assuming the cloud provider's standard data protection measures are sufficient and addressing any potential data residency issues reactively if they arise. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT infrastructure management, balancing the immediate benefits of a new technology with the long-term implications for operational efficiency and compliance. The professional challenge lies in discerning which solution, while seemingly beneficial in the short term, truly aligns with the organization's strategic goals and regulatory obligations. A hasty decision based solely on initial cost savings can lead to significant downstream problems, including increased technical debt, security vulnerabilities, and non-compliance with data handling regulations. The correct approach prioritizes a holistic evaluation that extends beyond immediate financial gains. It involves a thorough assessment of the proposed cloud solutions integration capabilities with existing on-premise systems, its adherence to data residency requirements, and its impact on the overall IT operational model. This approach represents best professional practice because it demonstrates due diligence, risk management, and a commitment to sustainable IT strategy. It ensures that the chosen solution not only meets current needs, but also supports future scalability and regulatory compliance, thereby safeguarding the organization's reputation and financial stability. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the upfront cost reduction without considering integration complexities or data governance would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of comprehensive risk assessment and a disregard for the potential for increased operational overhead and compliance breaches. For instance, adopting a cloud solution that does not adequately address data sovereignty requirements could lead to significant fines and legal repercussions under relevant data protection laws. Another incorrect approach might involve overlooking the need for specialized skills to manage the new cloud environment, leading to operational inefficiencies and potential security gaps. This demonstrates a failure to plan for the human capital aspect of technological adoption, which is critical for successful implementation and ongoing management. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining business objectives and regulatory constraints. This should be followed by a multifaceted evaluation of potential solutions, encompassing technical feasibility, security implications, operational impact, and compliance adherence. A pilot program or proof of concept can be invaluable in validating assumptions and identifying unforeseen challenges before full-scale deployment. Finally, ongoing monitoring and periodic reevaluation are essential to ensure the solution continues to meet evolving business needs and regulatory landscapes. Question 19. Investigation of a network engineer's decision-making process for selecting a new cloud-based security solution, where a prominent vendor has provided extensive pre-sales support, including a demonstration of their product integrated into a simulated environment and an offer of advanced training for the engineering team upon purchase. The engineer is tasked with evaluating this vendor's offering alongside two other competitors, with the final decision resting on technical merit, cost-effectiveness, and alignment with the organization's security policies. Option A. Accept the vendor's pre-configured solution and documentation as sufficient, assuming their simulated environment accurately reflects the organization's needs, and proceed with procurement to leverage the offered advanced training. Option B. Solely rely on the vendor's marketing materials, case studies, and the positive feedback from their simulated demonstration to make the selection, without conducting independent testing or further comparative analysis. Option C. Conduct an independent proof of concept for each vendor's solution within the organization's own test environment, rigorously comparing performance, feature sets, and integration capabilities against predefined technical requirements and business objectives, while documenting all findings and the rationale for the final selection. Option D. Prioritize the vendor offering the advanced training and significant pre-sales support, viewing these as indicators of a strong partnership and a commitment to customer success, and recommend their solution based on this perceived value. The correct answer is C. Conduct an independent proof of concept for each vendor's solution within the organization's own test environment, rigorously comparing performance, feature sets, and integration capabilities against predefined technical requirements and business objectives, while documenting all findings and the rationale for the final selection. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a vendor's desire to promote their product and the network engineer's responsibility to select the most suitable solution based on objective technical merit and organizational needs. The engineer must navigate potential pressure to favor a specific vendor, which could compromise the integrity of the network design and potentially lead to suboptimal performance, increased costs, or security vulnerabilities. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the decision-making process remains transparent, unbiased, and aligned with the organization's best interests. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, objective evaluation of all viable solutions against predefined technical requirements and business objectives. This aligns with ethical principles of professional integrity and competence. By documenting the evaluation criteria, testing methodologies, and rationale for the final selection, the engineer establishes a transparent and defensible decision-making process. This approach ensures that the chosen solution is technically sound, cost-effective, and meets the organization's long-term strategic goals, thereby upholding the engineer's duty of care and fiduciary responsibility to their employer. An incorrect approach that involves accepting the vendor's pre-configured solution without independent verification would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of due diligence and an abdication of professional responsibility. It risks implementing a solution that may not be optimized for the specific environment, could introduce security flaws, or might be unnecessarily expensive. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of diligence and could be seen as implicitly endorsing the vendor's claims without proper scrutiny, potentially misleading the organization. Another incorrect approach, accepting a significant gift or incentive from the vendor in exchange for favorable consideration, represents a clear ethical and potentially regulatory failure. This constitutes a conflict of interest, compromising the engineer's objectivity and impartiality. Such actions can violate professional codes of conduct and internal company policies regarding gifts and gratuities. The organization could face repercussions if it is perceived that procurement decisions were influenced by personal gain rather than technical merit, potentially leading to legal or reputational damage. A further incorrect approach, solely relying on the vendor's marketing materials and testimonials without independent validation, is also professionally unsound. This approach is based on potentially biased information and lacks the rigor necessary for critical technical decision-making. It fails to account for the specific nuances of the organization's existing infrastructure, operational requirements, and security posture. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of professional skepticism and a failure to exercise independent judgment, which are fundamental to responsible engineering practice. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve establishing clear, objective evaluation criteria upfront, involving relevant stakeholders, conducting thorough proof-of-concept testing, documenting all findings and decisions, and maintaining strict adherence to ethical guidelines regarding conflicts of interest and professional integrity. Question 20. What factors determine the scope and depth of an impact assessment when migrating on-premise network services to a Cisco cloud-based solution? Option A. The personal technical expertise of the IT team regarding cloud technologies and the general trend of cloud adoption in the market. Option B. The perceived cost savings of the cloud solution and the availability of vendor-provided migration tools. Option C. The criticality of the on-premise services being migrated, the sensitivity of the data involved, and the specific regulatory compliance requirements applicable to the organization's industry and geographic location. Option D. The marketing materials provided by the cloud solution vendor and the opinions of early adopters in online forums. The correct answer is C. The criticality of the on-premise services being migrated, the sensitivity of the data involved, and the specific regulatory compliance requirements applicable to the organization's industry and geographic location. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in a regulated environment where the implementation of new cloud solutions must be carefully assessed for potential impacts on existing on-premise infrastructure and services. The challenge lies in balancing the benefits of cloud adoption with the risks of disruption, data integrity issues, and compliance violations. A thorough impact assessment is crucial to ensure that the transition is smooth, secure, and adheres to all relevant regulations, preventing potential financial penalties, reputational damage, and operational downtime. The need for a structured and comprehensive approach is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic evaluation of the proposed cloud solution's integration with existing on-premise systems, data flows, security protocols, and compliance requirements. This includes identifying potential conflicts, dependencies, and vulnerabilities. A detailed impact assessment will map out how the cloud solution will affect network performance, data storage and retrieval, application functionality, user access, and disaster recovery capabilities. It will also scrutinize the solution against applicable regulations, such as those governing data privacy, security standards, and industry-specific compliance mandates. This proactive identification and mitigation of risks are essential for ensuring a successful and compliant deployment, aligning with best practices for IT governance and risk management. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a cloud solution without a comprehensive impact assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. One incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed of deployment over thorough evaluation, leading to unforeseen compatibility issues, security gaps, and potential data breaches. This disregards the regulatory obligation to ensure the security and integrity of data, as well as the ethical responsibility to protect sensitive information. Another incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the technical aspects of the cloud solution, while neglecting its implications for existing on-premise infrastructure and business processes. This oversight can result in operational disruptions, reduced efficiency, and non-compliance with service-level agreements and internal policies. Furthermore, assuming that cloud solutions are inherently compliant without verifying their alignment with specific regulatory frameworks is a critical error, potentially leading to violations of data residency laws, privacy regulations, and security standards. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to impact assessment. This involves identifying potential risks, analyzing their likelihood and impact, and developing mitigation strategies. The process should be iterative, involving stakeholders from various departments, including IT, security, legal, and business operations. Before any implementation, a clear understanding of the regulatory landscape and its implications for cloud adoption is essential. This includes consulting relevant documentation, seeking expert advice, and conducting thorough due diligence on cloud service providers. Documenting the entire assessment process, including findings, recommendations, and mitigation plans, is crucial for accountability and future reference.